One of my favorite movies is The Last of the Mohicans, the version that was made in the early 1990s with Daniel Day-Lewis. And in that movie, there's a scene where the main character is speaking to the main female character. And he says, "My father warned me about people like you." And she reacts surprised by that statement, and she asks what he meant. And he said, "Do not try to understand them. Yes, and do not try to make them understand you. That is because they are a breed apart and make no sense." And I think that when it comes to personality type, there are some aspects of the way that our brains are wired that cause us to look at other people and think they are a breed apart and make no sense. Or if we don't think that, at the very least, in our interactions with one another and in our communication with one another, it bears out that we are a breed apart from one another, and to each other we make no sense. Yesterday I posted a video about just one of the differences, and there are many, between introverted and extroverted thinking. And I have found in my time, and some of my thoughts today are coming off of both my thoughts from that video and the comments that that video received. I have found in my time of analyzing these types of things that when it comes to trying to understand another human being, one of the biggest difficulties comes when the person that you're communicating with uses the introverted cognitive function of which you use its extroverted counterpart. So in other words, if you use introverted feeling in your top cognitive function stack, you will often be confused and confounded by people who use extroverted feeling. The same is true for those who use introverted thinking, trying to communicate with those who use extroverted thinking. And the same is true in the intuition and sensing realms as well. So I just want to piggyback a little bit more off of that video yesterday on introverted and extroverted thinking. So if you haven't watched that, you might want to go back and watch that before you delve deeper into this video. But what happens, I think, is that when we are using, let's say, extroverted thinking, we are trying to accomplish something very different than the person who is using introverted thinking. And I received a comment yesterday, or today, I think it was, on that video from yesterday. And thank you to the commenter for making such an excellent point about the fact that we are really not trying to accomplish the same thing. When an extroverted thinking user is tackling a problem, he or she is primarily concerned with just fixing the problem and moving on. He or she is not necessarily concerned with fixing it in the most precise or perfect way, in the textbook way, nor is he or she necessarily concerned with understanding, when it's all said and done, why it was able to be resolved or solved in the way that it was. The primary concern for extroverted thinking is just fix it, solve it, get it done, accomplish the thing, or fix the problem, or make the malfunctioning machine function again. I don't necessarily need to know why it was not functioning or why the solution worked the way that it did. I don't need to understand all the intricacies of the machinery to be able to say, yay, it's fixed, I can get on with my life, I'm done. However, with introverted thinking is much more concerned with not just resolving the problem. And by the way, at times, introverted thinking is not even necessarily concerned with whether or not the problem ever gets completely solved in the, like, okay, we need to get it done so that we can do the thing and move on concept. It's more concerned with, I want to understand. I want to understand the complexities of the machine. I want to understand what led to the failure within the machine. I want to understand not just that we solved the problem, but how did we solve the problem? And why did taking the steps that we took end up solving the problem? Introverted thinking cares much more about understanding the entire situation than it cares about whether or not the problem gets solved so that we can move on. Of course, it wants the problem solved, but it wants the problem solved to the end of having all sorts of thorough comprehension of everything that led up to the problem and everything that went into solving it. Extroverted thinking does not so much care about those issues. It just wants to solve the problem. Now, the commenter on the video from yesterday made an interesting point, which was something to the effect of, and forgive me for not quoting it perfectly, when the introverted thinking person begins asking the questions like, why? Why did it work that way? Why is it broken? Why is the thing not functioning like it should be? What led to it? What can we do to not just resolve it, but to understand it all? The extroverted thinking person is oftentimes going to become annoyed by those questions. It's a matter of, I don't know, I don't care. Why do you care? Why does it matter? Why are you asking these questions? Who cares? Let's just resolve the issue, fix the machine, fix the problem, get the thing working, do the thing so that we can move on to whatever comes next. Introverted thinking is going to be very annoyed by extroverted thinking's unwillingness or a complete lack of concern for having a thorough understanding of the situation. And extroverted thinking is going to be very annoyed by introverted thinking's slow processing and need to not just resolve the issue, but to take the time to figure out all this stuff that in the end, to extroverted thinking, doesn't really matter, because understanding the problem and the solution is not nearly as important as just solving the problem and moving on. Extroverted thinking is comfortable fixing an issue and never necessarily being able to explain why the issue occurred in the first place or how the solution actually, down to the details, was the solution. Why did it solve the problem? And this is a problem for communication because introverted thinkers and extroverted thinkers are attacking potentially the same problems, but from a completely different standpoint. They're trying to accomplish really a completely different goal, and they're looking at everything from a completely different set of eyes and a different brain wiring. And this leads to people having miscommunications, not understanding one another, not liking one another. And by the way, this is true. What I'm saying is true for the extroverted intuitive who's trying to communicate with the introverted intuitive, the extroverted sensor who's trying to communicate with the introverted sensor, and the extroverted feeler who's trying to communicate with the introverted feeler. And I intend to do some videos on this topic as it pertains specifically to feeling, because that's something that is very close to me. Another commenter this morning on that same video from yesterday made mention of the fact that extroverted feelers probably annoy introverted feelers. And I have to admit, there is so much truth to that. All types are necessary for the world, wonderful, and have many, many great things that benefit humanity. But we introverted feelers oftentimes fail to see the benefit that the extroverted feelers provide and are often annoyed by them. Now, I don't want to speak for all introverted feelers because I'm sure there are some who would disagree with me on that, and that's fine. Let me just say that in my experience, those people that I have had the most difficulty communicating with in my life are people who lead with extroverted feeling. I just don't speak their language, and they don't speak mine. They're not good or bad or wrong in any way, and I'm not necessarily good or bad or wrong in any way. It's just a simple matter of brain wiring. We don't speak the same language. To an introverted feeler, extroverted feelers are a breed apart and make no sense. To an introverted thinker, extroverted thinkers are a breed apart and make no sense. And so it holds with intuition and sensing as well. This is something that I think is so key to get one's mind around, because if you are in a relationship, be it work or spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, or significant other, or child, parent, whatever it may be, friends, coworkers, it doesn't matter. If you're in a relationship with someone who has that flip function of you, so you're an introverted thinker and they're an extroverted thinker, it is important, I think, to try to get your brain around this concept. Now, in the quote that I said at the beginning of the video, I said, do not try to understand them and do not try to make them understand you. I personally would give slightly different advice. I would say, try to understand them, but don't try to make them understand you. Not unless they're really open to it, not unless they're really willing, interested, and coming to the relationship with the same dedication to trying to be able to have good communication with you that you are trying to bring to the relationship. So try to understand them. But unless they ask personally, I wouldn't recommend that you try to make them understand you, unless the topic comes up, and sometimes it does, because they are a breed apart and oftentimes will make no sense. Thank you so much for watching. Do please click the like button if you found this entertaining, informational, or useful. Please subscribe if you have not already. And if you have been benefiting from the videos on this channel and would like to donate financially to what I'm doing, that would be much appreciated. You can do that in the description below. There will be a link that you can click on that will take you to a website where you can do that. Have an awesome day. Bye now.